It is dark. There are two shapes on the ground, human-shaped shapes. If you squint, if you look really, really hard, you can just about see them, lying in the grass in the garden, gazing up at the stars, millennia in the past, or in the future, maybe. There are two brothers. A voice. The younger one says, "How do we navigate by the stars?" And the older one replies, "The stars make a map. They don't change the way that maps do sometimes. No matter where you are in the world, even if you're completely lost, if you know the stars, you can find your way home." How? Just look for the North Star. He raises his arm and points. First, you find the Big Dipper. See that? And then you draw a line. Polaris. His little brother looks over at him and he thinks, when I'm bigger, I'm going to scoop up all of those stars and take them with me. Now, before I carry on, I feel like I need to tell you that not all of this story is true. And that's because it can't be, because the people that could tell it as it really happened aren't here anymore. I will tell it as truthfully as I can, and where there are patches of dark matter, I'll use what I do know to guess the rest. Those two brothers, though, they are real. The oldest one, the one who knows how to find Polaris, his name is Cor, short for Cornelis. He knows how to navigate by the stars because he sailed all over the world with the Dutch Merchant Navy. The younger one's name is Tom, and he idolizes Cor because he seems to know everything. Not just about stars, but how to build a radio, how to break a horse, how to jumpstart a car. Cor is 25 years old, he rides a motorbike, he smokes cigars, and he's the coolest person in the whole universe. These two brothers, Cor and Tom, are my great-great-uncles, and they are reaching up, away from the pull of gravity. Now, most of their side of the family live in North Holland, and a lot of this story takes place in the Netherlands. Now, this is the point in the British show where I would make a really mean joke about British people knowing fuck all about the Netherlands. But I don't know. I mean, do American people know very much about the Netherlands? You're shaking your head. That's fine, because I'm about to give you a crash course in the name of theatrical context. So, are you ready? Laten we gaan, let's go. This is the Netherlands. It shares borders with Belgium and Germany. Its coastline is on the North Sea, and it used to be connected to the UK by land. You could literally walk across to it. But then we voted for Brexit, so Great British Industry put the North Sea in. Yeah, that part's true. I'm going to clumsily use a few Dutch words in this show, and one which I will use quite soon is oma. And that just means grandmother, okay? So, admin over. We can get on with the story. 80 years after Cor shows Tom how to find Polaris, my family is sitting around the dinner table in North Holland the night before my aunt's wedding. We have Oma, who is grandma, good so, and 4 of her 5 children, my dad, Marien, and 3 of my aunts, Margriet, Marijke, and Annemarie. We don't know what happened to him, says Oma as I come through the door. This part of the story is true, by the way. I know, because I was there as well. Hiya! We don't know what happened to him, says Oma as I come through the door. Who's that? I ask. We were talking about Cor. Who? What would he be to Nat's mama? Well, he'd be her uncle. No, he's our uncle. Well, Papa's uncle, actually. So her great-uncle? Is that what? Who said did in Engels? Ja, her great-uncle? Ja, we got one more generation. So great-great-uncle. Ja, her great-great-uncle. So. Well, what were you saying about him? We were talking about when he was taken. Taken? Ja, zeker, during the war. During the war? Yeah, he was in the resistance. The resistance? Why have I never heard? Yeah, dat heb ik je verteld, Engels mama. Sorry, I have told you this, Natalie. I think I would have remembered. He died in a concentration camp, right? I heard that he was shot at the side of the road. Wasn't it? Nee, it was a camp. Do you remember which one? I thought, was it in Poland? Nee, it was... so sorry. How did he die? I don't remember. It's in the past anyway, it's so long ago. Let's talk about happy things. Everybody, eat potatoes. Hurrah! Nom, 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 nom. We didn't talk about him again. But his story lingers in my mind long after that dinner. The truth is, there's a huge gap in my knowledge about the Dutch part of me. I'm determined to find out more about this mysterious great-great-uncle Cor, and I know exactly who I'm going to ask. I'm 7 years old, and when I grow up, I want to be an astronaut. Pretty cool, huh? I remember I used to dream about being alone in space, circling in zero gravity. I tell Oma about this dream of mine, and she says, "Oh, you have an uncle in America who's an astronomer. You should write to him. Here's his address." Uncle Tom lives in Arizona, United States, and I sent him a letter. Do you remember those? I used to write quite a lot of letters, mostly to Prime Minister Tony Blair. Pretty cool, huh? But not often to family, so it felt different. I really hoped that I would get a reply. And I did. We exchanged letters for a few months. And then, one day, instead of a regular letter, there was a thud on the doormat. And this arrived. Dear Natalie, I hope one day you will read this. There is a lot of complicated science in it that you may not understand because you're too young, but there are also many stories in it about our family, which will be important for you to know one day. Cheers, Uncle Tom. Inside is this book, On the Glassy Sea. It is part autobiography, part biography, part popular science, part proper science. On the back is this photograph of Tom on his bike. Look, no hands. So dangerous. I open the book cautiously. The energy of the collision in the last column comes from the kinetic energy of the asteroid 1/2 mv squared. The velocity v of a near-Earth asteroid with respect to the Earth is typically, do you know what, it's quite hard, isn't it? Astronomy, it's quite difficult. Okay, let's look at the pictures instead. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fine. Oh. One for later, I think. Yeah. Okay. So I slot the book up on the shelf to be read one day. Time goes on. The book fades, gathers dust. Not ignored exactly, but overlooked. What I don't realise is, as with all unread books, it is just waiting for the right time to share its secrets with me. Maybe he planned it that way. No, probably not. In 2003, 6 years after the book finds its way to me, NASA confirmed the official end of their Pioneer missions after attempted signals to the Pioneer 10 craft go unanswered. Pioneer 10 was launched in 1972 and transmitted the first ever close-up images of Jupiter and Saturn taken from space. It is now on its way to the giant star Aldebaran, which it will reach in approximately 2 million years. Oh yeah, and Uncle Tom died last year. This is how I find out that Tom is dead. From Oma at the end of a long list of births and marriages of distant cousins. And I feel sad and silly for feeling sad because we never met each other. We just wrote a few letters back when I was a kid. But I realized that up until this moment, I've been thinking about Professor Tom Gerols as frozen in time, up on his mountain, sitting inside his telescope, interpreting the secrets of the stars. I never thought he would die, and that the chance to write to him again or meet him would be gone. I decide to make things right, to try to get to know him, even if it is too late. So as soon as I get home, I take his book down from the shelf and I start to read it. And ever since then, I've been writing this. I think it's a letter to the dead. Tom and Cor, like centuries of the family before them, are born on a farm in a village named Halfweg. Literally translated, this means halfway. In the land which has been reclaimed from the North Sea, the polders, the clouds skim fast across the silver sky, and the high humidity brings a ghostly morning mist, and a rain so soft they call it motregen, moth rain, because it feels like the wings of moths brushing across your cheeks. Cor is the eldest child, and Tom is the 6th and last. The family is Dutch Reformed Protestant, that kind of old-time religion that still holds revivals in fields with bare white churches, practicing public shaming. It's a way of life which feels as if it has always been and will always be, but things are starting to slip. They can feel it, this tilt of the axis. Mistrust, scarcity, and disinformation breed division, hatred, and fear. There is a low, inhuman groan in the air like the shift of a tectonic plate. And somewhere else in Europe, not so far away, a young upstart politician named Adolf is released early from prison. The teenage Cor is obsessed by a brand new invention, the shortwave radio. He builds his own in the attic, and he spends hours tinkering, straining to hear the first faint crackle of a voice. He becomes highly skilled and escapes to work as a radio operator with the Dutch Merchant Navy. At home, Tom dreams of adventure, of parachuting out of planes, of ballooning across Paris, or of crewing a submarine deep beneath the waves. Cor could have settled anywhere in the world, but he always comes back to Halfweg for a woman. Her name is Griet de Wit. I don't have a photo of her, but I've been told that she has rosy cheeks and a warm laugh and a wry sense of humour.
Did you hear? An absolute disgrace.
The neighbours.
Jacob's eldest and that girl he rides around town with. She's pregnant, out of marriage.
Oh, whoops. Not long after, Cor and Griet are married, and Cor gets a job with Philips as a radio engineer, and they move to Eindhoven in the east to start their life together. Not long after that, their daughter Coco is born. Cor has seen the sunrise over the Cape and the stars over the South Pacific and the lush jungle flowers of Indonesia. But his daughter is more beautiful than any of those things. Come on, Koos. Yeah. Goed zo. Over the next 15 years, he and Griet have 7 more children. And in Griet's own words, we would have had more if the Germans hadn't taken him away.
On May the 10th, 1940, the Netherlands is invaded by Germany! The invasion is such a shock. Penny, can we just cut it out? They can't hear me.
Yeah. The invasion is not a shock, but it is a surprise. The Dutch were convinced, despite all the signs, that they would never be invaded by their closest and much more powerful neighbour. We carry on as normal until we can't anymore. The next morning, Cor gets up, kisses Griet and the children goodbye, and goes out to work at the factory. The engineers fumble with their delicate work. Their hands are shaking. The door slams open to reveal 2 sets of boots, so clean that Cor can see his reflection in them. 2 starched collars, 2 eagles,
and 2 swastikas.
We need you to build a transmitter
Says one of the Nazi soldiers at the door.
for the oncoming troops. It must be ready in 1 hour.
Cord has never seen a real Nazi before. At least not a German one. He thought they'd be taller. The engineers glance at each other because the soldiers haven't recognised that lined up along the desks are a series of small transmitters. Not powerful, but they do the job just fine. Cord says, in broken German, I'm afraid that not possible is. Ready in 1 hour it cannot be. Some of Cord's co-workers dare to look the officers in the eye, and Cord memorises the names of these people for later.
It has to be possible. It is the Fuhrer's orders, for Christ's sake. Aren't you the primary radio engineers in this whole damn country?
Yes, but even the best engineer cannot make transmitter with the wavelength you need in 1 hour. My deepest apologies. Can we have 4 hours? The soldier throws up his hands.
This fucking backward country.
He hisses. They turn on their heels and leave.
The Philips factory is requisitioned by the German military, and overnight, Cord finds himself working for the Nazis. In the smoking break, he sparks a conversation with those co-workers that he'd identified as non-collaborators. They sketch and experiment in attics and cellars, and before long, this small group has designed and built a powerful nationwide radio transmitter. It will broadcast vital public information in Dutch and in secret from inside the occupied country. The station is called Herreizen Nederland, resurrecting the Netherlands. More people are disappearing. No one knows where, they say. That's not true, says Cord. Someone knows. The man beside him at work hasn't shown up. Evaporated. Shot, or escaped to England, or sent to the front. Replaced by a blank face whose loyalty can't be guessed. And no one even seems to notice. Meanwhile, the piles of paper in offices across Germany grow larger. They grow so large that they have to move them, from folders to cabinets to rooms to vaults, series of vaults. Thousands of lives sealed behind locked doors, only to be opened after the bombings of 1945. Tom hears stories of boys not much older than him given a gun and sent to kill. Stories of book burnings at the universities, of people putting their affairs in order, closing down their lives. Whole families hide in cupboards. Jewish neighbours are told to leave, to assemble, to be registered in stadiums and theatres in Amsterdam, and all that is left is their suitcases. Some churches make deals with the Nazi Party. They will not be targeted as long as they keep their head down and say nothing. So they say nothing. And Tom's waning belief in God finally comes to an end. His mind, now free, is a galaxy of questions. Lying in the grass outside the house, gazing up at the ever-changing sky, he thinks to himself, where is heaven? What does it look like? And is there a bigger version of godliness? Bigger even than mankind? And if there is, how does one even begin to look for it? In response to resistance activity in Holland, this man, Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS and architect of the concentration camp system, issues an order called Night and Fog. What you're about to hear is a translation of that order.
After lengthy consideration, it is the will of the Führer that the measures taken against those who who are guilty of offences against the Reich or against the occupation forces in occupied areas should be altered. The Führer is of the opinion that in such cases, penal servitude or even a hard labour sentence for life will be regarded as a sign of weakness. Efficient and enduring intimidation can only be achieved either by capital punishment or by measures by which the relatives of the criminals do not know the fate of the criminal. The offenders are to be transported to Germany secretly, and further treatment of the offenders will take place here. The prisoners will vanish without a trace, and no information may be given as to their whereabouts or their fate. Heil.
Cord has to answer a number of questions very quickly. Whose side is he on? Where does he draw the line? And what kind of world does he want to leave behind? The stories of his activities are varied and unverified. By 1943, we know that he was collecting donations for the families of the disappeared, raising what is now around £1.6 million. He may also have been distributing illegal newspapers, handing out black market food stamps, gathering intelligence to send to England, or hiding Jews in his home until a safer place can be found. He may have been doing all of these things, or none of them. When Griet asks him what he's up to, he doesn't tell her anything, but she may see the shoddily sewn secret pockets in the lining of his coat. She may see the desperate people that he leads round to the woodshed in the dead of night, and she may smell the gasoline on his hands as he creeps back into bed in the early hours of the morning. We carry on as normal until we can't anymore. And today is Cord's 37th birthday. The children wake him up by hammering on the piano. Griet bakes a cake, and they challenge him to eat the whole thing himself. Somehow, she's managed to find him a cigar, and after the children are asleep in the clouds of bluish smoke, they dance together, treading cake crumbs into the carpet. And then he is betrayed. He's interrogated for 4 days. He doesn't give them what they want. At least, that's what Tom wrote in his book, but the truth is we can't ever really know what happened. Either way, they lock him in Haarlem prison. One Sunday, Tom bikes there, through the woods along its high walls, and he sings resistance songs. And a few days after that, he packs a bag and leaves home. Crossing the orbit of Neptune, in 1983, Pioneer 10 becomes the first man-made object to leave the solar system. Tom is 18, and he's on his way to England. He's cycling, whizzing along that old road hollowed out by centuries of migrating feet from a time when borders were not such a hard thing. He's singing at the top of his lungs, nearly at the border with Belgium. From there, it's just a short hop over to London to be formally trained by the Resistance. He'll join up with them, and before long, he'll be able to find Cord and break him out of prison. Nice. The closer he gets to the border, the quieter it becomes, until...
What in fuck do you think you're doing?
British soldiers hunkered down in the grass. After a long conversation during which it's decided that he's probably not a German spy, they give him a map and show him the way to Belgium. He's almost there when...
What in fuck do you think you're doing?
German soldiers
hunkered down in the grass. After a long conversation during which it's decided that he's probably not a British spy, they bundle him with a group of captives in a nearby town. This town is attacked and freed by the British the following morning, and Tom is told,
You can't fly to England. England is out of bounds. The only way is to get to Spain and see if some yank can't take you from there.
so he finds his way into Belgium, down through France, and finally into Spain, where he is told,
You can't fly to England from here. The only way is to get to France and take a ferry.
so he finds his way out of Spain, back into France, onto a boat, and finally makes it to England, where he's arrested and interrogated for 4 days. Eat your heart out, Suella. Right, Dutchie, time for your final exam. Spit Spot, tell me again the exact route that you took from Hearthweg. What trees are common at the edge of Rotterdam? Did you encounter members of the parachute regiment? And most importantly, how do you say the name of this town? Go on, I dare you. The interrogations seem never ending. With every passing moment, Tom's chances of finding Cord are getting slimmer. After these few months of debugging at Patriotic School, Tom is offered a position with the Special Operations Executive, also known as the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. He is trained in sharpshooting, radio technology, ambush, boom, judo, hi-ya, and parachuting. He's given a cyanide pill and told that he will be dropping back into Holland in 2 days' time. In London, the last free capital in Europe, Tom walks through a bomb site. Blood festoons the icy ground, rubble and blown body parts. The work of a V-2 rocket, which now fall from the sky like snow or rain or confetti used to in the old days, in the time before.
1944. The shadow of defeat is looming over Axis forces in occupied Europe. Germany is indeed on the defensive. But with the help of a team of scientists in the resort town of Peenemünde, Mr. Hitler has one more trick up his sleeve. The V-2 rocket.
The chief scientist of the V-2 program is a Mr. Werner von Braun. Here he is at his arrest. His rockets are manufactured by slave labour in the tunnels of concentration camp Mittelbau-Dora.
The V-2 missile is powered by a liquid propellant rocket engine, and on the 20th of June 1944, it became the first object to be launched into space from Earth.
The brain stops processing distance at 25,000 feet, apparently. On the red light, Tom swings his feet into the hole. Green light, jumps, sucked into the sky, backwards, upwards, howling air, limbs flailing, face rippling, fields twisting, blind faith, fumble back, pull cord, snap, parachute tumbles out, and suddenly, they are flying. Floating, drifting down towards the earth. Thump, duck, run, fold, pack, stand to attention. Home. Enschede, in the far east of the Netherlands. The moth rain tickles Tom's cheeks. His fury is a hot stone. Have you heard? One of the resistance says. We're about to liberate Eindhoven. We're about to liberate Eindhoven, whisper the prisoners down the table at Haren prison. Cor listens, but says nothing. It has been over a year, and he can't protect his children. This is the thought that keeps him awake at night. But this night, with these whispers of liberation so close, he sleeps just a little until it's the middle of the night. "This is it," whispers his cellmate. "We've been liberated, we're going home." Kor grabs a screwdriver from his hiding place under the floorboards and slips it inside his boot. He's stuffed inside a cattle car. The train shunts into motion. This part of the story came in letters to Tom from a fellow prisoner named Henk van Hoover. There is a heat wave that summer. The prisoners cry out for water, but nothing comes. A bloated hand lies limp on the floor as Kor attacks the carriage wall with his screwdriver. "You know what they'll do if they catch you," says Henk. "They'll kill you, and all of us, and probably your family too." They've arrived somewhere. "We can't have gone far. We're still in Holland, I'm sure of it." Transit Camp Vught is 23 miles from Eindhoven. They are handed their provisions. Kor's uniform is riddled with bullet holes. Maybe. He's handed a small bar of soap, and years later, Tom will cry when he reads what the soap in the camps is made from. Possibly. Kor clutches the soap and cues for food. Tom crouches in the grass and watches the sky. And Griet hears that Eindhoven has been liberated. She leaves the door on the latch. Just in case. Tom and his unit cycle cross-country, using their handheld radios to broadcast information back to London.
Hier is herrijzend Nederland, de zender op vrije vaderlandse grond. Luisteraars, blijkt aan uw toestel. Luisteraars, blijkt aan uw toestel. Hier volgt de mededeling.
It's the first broadcast from Kor's transmitter.
De volgende mededeling gedateerd.
Tom lies awake, wondering if Kor can hear it.
Is opgezet van de geallieerde opperbevelhebber uitgegeven door het hoofdkwartier van het geallieerde expeditie.
What you're seeing are the very first images of Jupiter, sent back from the Pioneer 10 spacecraft in the year 1973. Like the broadcasts of resistance radio stations, early spacecraft were sent into the ether by a group of mavericks with no definite chance of success. I think they're beautiful. The prisoners can tell from the route the train takes out of Sachsenhausen that they're heading east. Kor curls his frozen hand around Henk's, presses something into his palm, winks, and disappears into the crowd. Henk uncurls his fist. A cigarette. 3 cigarettes can be traded in this new world for a loaf of bread. 100 will get you a bottle of vodka. There is a hole in the east, they say, with a gravity so strong that nothing can escape it. From time to time, you can hear a sound from inside of it, a ravenous howling, but nothing has been confirmed because no one has come back. If you cross its threshold, you get torn apart, spaghettified, absorbed into the hole. Dark night, floodlight, barking dog, Poland, time begins to splinter, fracture, break apart. At night, we will hold seminars. We will be amazed to find that we are still human. We still have things to say. A Polish Jew will gush about Chopin. A French communist will wax lyrical about Baudelaire. A Dutch political might explain the complexities of shortwave radio. As we queue for food, we may hear the ghostly strains of a nocturne. As we assemble for roll call, we will try to remember the poetry we learned at school, and as we lie in our bunks, we will dream the constellations into the wooden slats above us. Cord knows, after what he's seen, that he can never sit in that church in Halfway again. And yet, how he longs to be there. How he stretches his soul towards that place. He's already there. He's cycling alongside his daughter who is now 16. She's racing him on the polder path, her blonde hair whipping into her wide eyes, her cheeks rosy, her mother's cheeks. The moth rain tickles them. She pulls up the collar of her threadbare duffel coat, but she doesn't stop pedaling. Her heart is pounding, but she doesn't stop pedaling because she's going to make contact with the resistance. How do you fix something so far away? This is the subject of Tom's morning meeting. Because in 1973, Pioneer 10 is not working as it should, sending back these mangled images. By 1950, the cities of Europe are decimated. Tom is 25 and he's studying astronomy at the University of Leiden. One summer, he's offered the opportunity to travel to America, and he decides to take a pilgrimage from New York Harbor to Palomar Observatory in Southern California, the largest astronomical telescope in the world, a distance of almost 3,000 miles. Carrying a rucksack with just one change of clothes, he decides to hitchhike. He makes a sign reading Holland to California to hold at the side of the road. In 2018, I pack a big suitcase and I set out to follow in his footsteps. I make a sign as well, England to Palomar. I'm not hitchhiking, I just want it for selfies mostly. Luckily, Tom makes it there in just a few long-distance trips, sailing the plains of Missouri and Kansas, skimming the top of Texas, crossing through the mesas of New Mexico and up through the red rocks of Arizona. I stay in an Airbnb 2 hours away from the observatory, and in the morning, with the dawn chill still in the air, I set out for my drive to the top of the mountain. The last lift that Tom takes is with a Native American woman who stops her truck at the base of the mountain and simply points up. And so Tom begins to climb, up and up and up for hours on a seemingly never-ending road. The road before me rises and dips, hairpin bends and swooping curves giving way to sheer drops and crumbling cliffs. I keep my eyes peeled for a sight of the domes, but they're elusive. Each time the land before you opens up, it is swallowed again by another rock. But eventually, road signs begin to appear for the highway to the stars. When I step out of my car at the top of the mountain, it is silent and motionless. The 200-inch telescope is bright white, pointing to the sky with a flight of white stairs leading up it. Tom holds his breath as he steps onto the cool marble. The electrical hum of the telescope is soothing. It lends itself to focus and preparation. It turns starlight into knowledge, and the scale of it, it's incredible.
That 200-inch seemed the greatest structure I had ever seen, more impressive than even the skyscrapers of New York. Byron took me all over that giant, on stairways and elevators to the very apex of the dome, and on top of it to look around almost as free of obstacles as from a parachute, such that one feels the urge to spread out the arms wide in jubilation of freedom and power, to have equipment as great as this for observing the universe.
68 years apart, we both walk through the door of Palomar Observatory for the first time. Before I've figured out what I'm going to say, I step into the kitchen of Tom's house in Arizona. His wife, Lydica, is sat at a stool at the worktop. She's 94 years old, and through cup after cup of coffee, she tells me the story of their meeting, their elopement, and their emigration. She remembers seeing
a young Dutchman in a baseball cap, stopping off the boat that came from New York. He looks good, he's been in the sun and healthy. And he had those twinkling blue eyes, very inquisitive looking.
they swap dreams for the future. Lydica tells Tom,
Yeah, he introduced himself. He said, I'm Tom Girls, and how are you? And I'm fine. And that was our first meeting, very romantic, on the harbor of Rotterdam. And that was the beginning of a very long life together.
and what did you say that your dream was when you met?
What did he say? What?
What was your dream when you met? One day.
Oh, yeah, a little bit later. He asked what would be the dream of my life. And he said, and I said, well, I would like to see the whole world. Maybe with you.
And Tom tells her, I've just got back from visiting the largest astronomical telescope in the world. As Tom walks away from her, he looks back and sees their future glowing brightly between them. By the time the campus of Leiden University is flushed with autumn, it seems inconceivable that they were ever apart. There is a quiet wedding, one weekday afternoon in the city hall with 2 witnesses pulled from the street. And before long, they're moving to America. With his brothers and nephews, Tom builds a trailer which will become their first home. They say goodbye to their families, not knowing if they will ever come back. At Rotterdam, with the brass bands playing on the dock, Tom and Lydica agree that from the moment they arrive in the US, they will no longer speak Dutch. Quite a common decision among emigrants at the time, and fine in theory, but suddenly Lydica is 4,000 miles from home and unable to communicate. Each time she tries to switch back to Dutch, Tom holds up his hand and says, only English, remember? She can say, this is an apple. She can say, dog, building, car. But how can she use these words to explain her suspicion that she might be pregnant? Or her elation when she sees a mountain for the very first time? There are words for these things in Dutch, but in English they feel like cold soup in her mouth. They buy a $100 car and load their trailer onto the back of it, setting out for California. They drive through forests and fields, cities and plains, streets swarming with people, and vast swathes of land utterly deserted. They shower at public swimming pools and stop in small towns to pick up odd jobs. Everything about America is exciting. Lydica sees television for the first time. There are shops which sell fruit and breakfast cereal and pantyhose and laundry detergent, all under one roof. In the rearview mirror, Tom catches glimpses of Cor. He keeps leaning forward to retune the radio. He likes the music, but he can't understand the language on the news reports. Tom and Lydica have their first fight, which lasts from Oregon to California, a distance of almost 866 miles.
Yeah, he could be very, very stubborn. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that we didn't fight very often, but sometimes he could be a little bit difficult.
Somewhere on Route 1, they pull the car over. The Pacific Ocean. Their first view of open water for months, and nothing but miles of silver until Japan. Lydekker goes in first. Tom follows her, and as he swills the cold water around his fingers, he feels just a little like some of the dust and dirt and blood is finally being washed away. This is the new world. In his peripheral vision, Tom sees Kåre sitting on a rock, smoking and laughing. Tom spends 50 years as an astronomer measuring immeasurable things. He grapples with ideas which baffle most people, trying to find better answers to the questions that he'd asked as a boy, lying in the grass and gazing up at the sky. Gerard Kuiper, the son of a Dutch tailor and architect of the moon landings, meets Tom at the Yerkes Observatory in Illinois. He's impressed by Tom's pioneering work on the first photometric system of measuring asteroids. Lethea, you'll never guess. Gerard's invited me to work with him at NASA. Most of the scientists on the space program are ex-soldiers. Gerard was part of the top-secret Alsos mission, finding and dismantling Nazi nuclear energy experiments before they could be found by the Soviets. Debatable how successful that was. On the other side was Wernher von Braun. He and his team are evacuated from Germany at the end of the war and given American citizenship to pioneer the technology which powered the moon landings. Werner and Gerard are now working together. But Tom remembers Werner's V2s raining down on London, Antwerp, Maastricht. First, Tom gathers data for space missions using high-altitude balloons, and then eventually he develops a machine to measure these immeasurable things for him. It is called an imaging photopolarimeter. This machine, which is on that table over there, and we'll call the IP, is accepted to be part of the Pioneer missions. And in 1973, it will transmit the first close-up images of Jupiter and Saturn taken from space. Tom watches it lift off from Cape Canaveral, up and out into the cosmos. And then he waits. The thing is growing larger, closer. What will it look like? Will it be what I expected? Will my life ever be the same with this thing in it? At first, it is no bigger than a pinprick of light in the vast dark. Tom and Lydekker have to squint to see him on the ultrasound. The scientists at NASA study it intently for signs of life. Day by day, they begin to grow, to expand. A golf ball, a grapefruit, a melon, a planet. A kaleidoscope of mottled colours, reds, browns, yellows and oranges, marbled in chaos, a heaving globe of turbulent gas and fizzing energy, a throbbing heart and an unstoppable gravitational pull. Jupiter. Their children. Light and life. Tom and his team watch Jupiter appear, sent back from their humble IP, and for a few hours, it's a secret. Tom and Lydekker hold their child's tiny red hands, and before they've shared him with the world, they are the only ones ever to have seen him. The work is too important to miss crucial details by celebrating. The weight of their discovery keeps Tom going with a laser-like focus until the time comes to go home, and then it begins again. Discoveries of a different kind. Neil's first steps, George's first word, Joanne's first laugh. As Tom steps out into the setting sun, he lets a huge grin crack across his face. He feels like dancing across the sand, like throwing his arms out and shouting up into the sky. In a pair of white dust gloves, I slip the first images of Jupiter, sent back from the IP, in a folder, in a box, in a vault at the University of Arizona Library. I've come halfway across the world to meet Tom the only way I still can, by looking through his archive. It is 39 boxes which contain some of the things of his life. I've decided to try to make a theatre piece, to gather as much information as I can and then to assemble it with the creative team in a drafty church hall in England, and then to share it with people, with you. But as I hold World War II army maps and NASA logbooks in my hands, I think, what am I doing here? You know, I mean, what makes me think that I can tell this story? How do we make sense of all of this, and why? One of the folders is significantly larger than the others. It contains 50 years of research. It is labelled Cor Gerald, 1906 to 45. The next part of the story is a little bit tricky, because I really wanted Cor's story to have a happy ending. I mean, I wrote a few different versions of how that might look, but it just didn't feel honest, you know? So I'm going to tell you it as it really happened. Is that okay? Okay. I wake up in Leipzig before dawn. I'm nervous as I drive down the Autobahn. There's a freezing grey mist as far as the eye can see and leafless trees. Heinrich Himmler made up a word for what he thought should happen to political prisoners, Wernebelt. It means to be transformed into mist. On my way to Camp Mittelbau-Dora, I passed through the quiet streets of the town of Nordhausen. Now, families are going out for coffee, doing their weekly shop, washing their cars, but every day, prisoners were marched through these streets in their striped uniforms as fragile as featherless birds, and children threw rocks at them. I'm almost at the camp when I get stuck at a railroad crossing. Oh, for fuck's sake. And then I realise that this train line, now transporting families and commuters, this is the line that would have brought Cor to this place. They throw open the doors. By now, Cor has been classified as a Musulman. This is not a nice word. This is camp slang, created to describe a condition exclusive to those places. This word started in Auschwitz, then spread. Musulmanen are classified as a being from whom humiliation, horror, and fear had so taken away all consciousness and personality as to make him apathetic, mute, and absolutely alone, without memory and without grief. And Himmler referred to them as excess ballast. Cor and Henk are separated because Henk is still fit enough to work and he doesn't see Cor again. The trees are just beginning to come into leaf. The only reason we even know this part of the story is that after the war, Henk chose to find the family and tell us about it. Tom looks up at those same trees. This is where Henk had always told him that Cor's story ended, but on some level he refused to believe it. He was killed in a bombing or shot for sedition, he tells himself. This is what he has chosen to believe about his brother's end. He doesn't talk about the war to anyone. He stands at the camp memorial. It is the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Camp Mittelbau-Dora. Half a century has come and gone. The Berlin Wall is down. They've landed a man on the moon. And the European powers thrash out their differences with treaties instead of with massacres, at least for now. Tom is 70 years old and he's been searching for another end to his brother's story for 50 years. His brother, whose absence is still present like a phantom limb. Sometimes he forgets that he's gone. He tries to remember his face, his voice, the sound of his laugh, but it's like trying to catch the tail of a balloon caught on an updraft, furtive but futile. He thought there'd be more people here. Tom hears the sound of rain being sucked into the ground, and behind him, shuffling feet. Coming up the stairs is a procession. The residents of Nordhausen, dressed in black, and each of them holds a bouquet. The thing about growing old is that now Tom can trace back the shape of his life. He sees himself leaving East Germany and arriving home in Arizona. He sees all of the spacecraft sucked back into Earth's gravity into the tunnels and pits of Dora. He sees his children as babies returning with him and Lydica to Holland, and Cor comes home in a van, and together they build radios and ride horses and lie on their backs in the grass, gazing up at the night sky. Nicole, the camp's archivist, is standing at the front desk of the small modern library. Goedenavond, Nathalie. Spreek je Nederlands? Oh, ja, een beetje, maar Engels is better. Oh, okay, well, welcome. We shake hands, and she begins to talk me through everything that they could find about Cor. It's 3 pages. The death book is not an official document. It was secretly kept by one of the inmates working in the crematorium. For every person, he wrote the number, the name, if he knew it, and the date of cremation. Cor's name is spelt wrong. He's the 7,811th death of Camp Mittelbau-Dora, 23rd of March, 1945, cremated the following day, Block 17. At first, Block 17 was a cinema for the guards, but when the prisoners began to arrive from the camps in the east, there were too many to register, so they put them in the cinema. All across Europe, the prisons were full. The camps were full, you see. In Block 17, they were very sick. Some of them had no clothes, no food or water. Many of them died while they were waiting to be registered. You can see from your uncle's page in the book that there are these, I'm not sure of the English word, dittos. Dittos, yes, thank you. That's because there are so many deaths on this day in Block 17. You can see here the date that he arrived from Poland. She points to the date, 13th to 17th of February 1945. I refer back to the cremation list and do the maths. So he was here for a month before he died in Block 17. Yes, I'm afraid that's right. I am sorry. if you want to see him, there is a place. Behind the crematorium, there's a collection of rocks. We call it the ash grave. Anyone who was cremated was put there, so that's where he is. If you want someone to talk to when you've been there, then you know where I am. In the early morning, Cor Gerels slipped out, shook off the accumulated dust of this life and faded into another, deeper one. Did he dream of the sun rising over the Cape? Or the stars over the South Pacific? Probably not. His children? He was cremated, his ashes dumped on the hillside behind the crematorium, his life emptied out on the breeze. Around a month later, Camp Dora is liberated by Allied carpet bombs. There are very few survivors. Another bomb falls on the bridge that Coco is cycling across, a young woman in the moth rain indistinguishable from a Nazi motorbike. By that time, Wernher von Braun is on a plane to the USA. He became the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center, and in 1975, the chief scientist of Dora concentration camp was awarded the National Medal for Science. He found evangelical Christianity in 1946. His SS number was 185068. Most of Dora is demolished by 1950, left to be pulled back into the dirt, buried, overcome by vine and root and earth. And I wonder if the things that happened here have left greasy traces in the veins of rocks or infected the groundwater. All of Europe is a graveyard if you dig deep enough. Sorry. I would love, in telling you this story, to say only the good things about humanity. It is misty by the stones. I sit there by the ash grave and I try to think of something to say. I feel like I should say something, but everything I think of just feels insincere or saccharine. So I don't say anything, but I see in the trees that people have started to build these cairns. It's a Jewish tradition and an ancient Celtic ritual that places stones in piles to remember the dead, to keep their souls from flying away. At Palomar Observatory, Tom discovers asteroid 2049. As he looks through the eyepiece of the telescope, he feels a warm, reassuring hand on his shoulder, and it occurs to him in that moment to name asteroid 2049 Grietje, after Cor's wife, who lives until her 80s, marries again, and never falls into despair. Tom looks up and sees the outline of his brother, blurry around the edges, leaving the observatory chamber. He jumps up, shouts, follows him out into the night, but Kor has melted away into dark matter. There is the faintest of faint green lines across the mountain ridge. Day is breaking. We think that the figures of the past will wait for us. But if we're not careful, the dust will harden, encase them, never to be salvaged. All of this time, this story, Tom's book sat on a bookshelf gathering dust, a signpost on the edge of lost, a blinking light in the darkness of forgetting. Steady, even as time marches on, even as the earth turns in the sky and Kor and Tom and Griet and Coco and all the others turn in the earth and Pioneer turns its gaze out towards the unknowable universe. Dark. There are 3 shapes on the ground. If you look really hard, you can just about see the 3. One a man, one a boy, and one a woman. A voice. The woman says, "How do we navigate by the stars?" And the boy replies, "The stars make a map.
9.
No matter where you are in the world, you can find your way home."
8.
How? "Just look for the North Star,"
7.
the man says. He points.
6.
First, you find the Big Dipper. See that? And then you draw a line.
5.
Polaris.
4.
His little brother and his great-great-niece look over at him.
3.
And then we look up.
2. 6. 1. 8. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's great to see so many people here, especially people who knew Tom. It's really wonderful. It's been amazing to bring this work back to the room where it started 4 years ago. So I just want to say a huge thank you to all of the team at the University of Arizona and Special Collections, and of course the Geros family for enabling this and allowing it to happen. A few things to say. So there's going to be a reception out in the foyer afterwards. It'd be great if you could stick around. I'd love to talk to you and hear what you think of the work. And there's just on the left, if you go down the corridor, there's some food and some drinks laid out for you.
It's also Dutch Christmas today, Sinterklaas, so gelukkige Sinterklaas. And we have a few little presents for people, so please do take one as you leave. And the final thing to say really is that at the beginning, I asked you to choose a stone. And those stones have been sitting with us this whole time, waiting for their meaning to be discovered. This piece is about remembrance. So if you'd like to, then I'd love to invite you just to take a moment to reflect. And when you're ready, you can come and place your stone on the memorial that I've started there at the front of the stage.